you said you are a teacher?
I'm a teacher. I'd rather not say exactly where, but it's in California.
Yeah. What do you teach?
I teach political science, so it's a college political science course in a 12th grade classroom for advanced students, so they can earn college credit while they're going to school. I am very adamant about being neutral in my classroom, so I don't share my own personal political views and presenting both sides. So if all my kids agree with one side, I'll just present the devil's advocate, whether I agree with it personally or not.
You're a better person than me. If I was a political science teacher, I'd be like, hold on. Yeah, the losers think this way. No, I'm just kidding. But it sounds like you're a great teacher. That's good to hear.
I just think it's important even if you don't agree with the other side, it's important to understand the other side's perspective and be able to, as a teacher, you should be able to argue both sides, in my opinion.
Totally.
But I had a student, just in reference to the Kirk thing, that I think that's what really kind of hit me was several years ago, this was many years ago, before a lot of people really knew who he was. I honestly didn't even know who he was at that point. A student came to me and asked, can we start a Turning Point chapter on campus? And I said, because I've always told my students, I will advise, because they have to have a teacher advisor, I will advise a conservative or a liberal or anything as long as it's, there's nothing negative about it. And this is like a mea culpa. I didn't know who he was, so I said, well, let me look into it. And I said, I will Google it. And the narrative, as we know online, was very negative, and I did about 20-30 minutes of research, and I got a lot of negative feedback, to be perfectly honest. And I told the student no. And he said, and I explained, I said, a lot of what I've seen is, showing that there's a lot of racist and this and that. And he's told me, he's like, but he's not. And I said, I can't support that, right?
How were you researching that, if you don't mind me asking? Were you
General
looking at articles? Were you looking at
Googling.
Google?
Yeah, sorry, Googling articles, the general. And I'll be honest, I did not do a deep dive, and that's a mea culpa. I should have, right? Like, as, being a busy teacher, you get caught up in, and I think this is what the average person does, right? They just kind of go in, kind of gloss over, get this big picture idea, and it often is not the accurate one, right? So then he just kind of said, but, Miss, I'm not going to say my last name, but, he's not. And I said, okay. I said, Miss Teacher. I said, he's not. And I said, okay. And so he just kind of let it go. Another student came back another year later and asked me, and this one did not let go. This student said, but you got to look at this. And I said, okay, so my thing is, I always say, bring me evidence, right? That's my thing. Bring me the evidence. He brought the evidence, right? He brought me tons of evidence, and we did a deep dive. And so I wish I could apologize to that first student, because I was wrong. I was very wrong. I looked at the quotes, and then they've taken out of context quotes, the completely missed quotes. I mean, it was ridiculous what I saw.
And it sounds like you're incredibly good faith in that. I think there's a lot of bad faith people that don't even try to do it. But it also makes it incredibly difficult when you have your search engines are against you as well. They're feeding all the top results are things to shape a particular narrative about somebody, either an ideology or a specific person. And so, you're using the tools that you have available. And those are misdirecting you as well.
And I think very well-intentioned people go in there, and that's the narrative they get, and they're like, well, how can you tell me anything different? This is what I'm seeing. This is my reality. And so we end up with two realities in this world, right?
For sure.
And so I have this one, because we do media as part of the unit, and I have this one screenshot of the 2016 election. I just did a Google image search. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton. Every single Donald Trump picture was like this mean looking, kind of evil, and then Hillary Clinton was always smiling in it. So I actually told my students to stop using Google at that point.
By the millions, those tiny little things have a massive psychological impact.
And so once he brought the evidence, and we deep dived and we looked at it, and we said, and I was wrong. I was like, he's not racist. He's not homophobic. He has a heart for God, and I am a Christian. I said, he has a heart for God, and so we were about to start a Turning Point chapter, and COVID hit. So we never ended up getting that going. But
that student won that debate, huh?
He won it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've had students change my mind. That's not the first time. It certainly wasn't the last time. So I've had students change my mind. I've always, my response is bring me the evidence. And when they bring it, I'm willing to look at it. But, the first one, I wish I could apologize. He's probably long off, probably married, having kids now, but I feel still terrible about that. And he was actually the one that introduced me to who Charlie Kirk was, those two students. So
and then here you are years later at Turning Point HQ to pay your respects.
Yeah. And just to look at it as regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, this is not okay. This is not okay. And, we talk about it in the class, and the vast majority of my students agree with that. They agree that it's not okay. But at the same time, some of them are saying, I don't know what to do with the fact that I secretly feel almost happy when the Butler thing happened. And, and I said, well, we need to look into that. Where's that coming from? And why are we why are we giving into that? So.
Well, tell me, as a political science teacher, tell me your perspective on this when it comes to the two very different reactions following the brutal assassination of Charlie Kirk. I know you're worried about your kids, and you should be, right, as a good teacher, but just in a general sense, your thoughts on those reactions as a country.
Yeah.
Can I get your take on that?
Yeah, I can say as far as in the classroom from the student's perspective, I'm on leave right now because I have actually made the decision to homeschool my daughter for the year. But I am still very involved with other teachers. And so I can give you some of the teacher reactions.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I have to say it has been very disheartening to see a lot of we have these like little private teacher groups where most of the time we're talking about curriculum and lesson planning, but this last week there's been a lot of very negative response and teachers that are posting saying, I don't want to say what I really think because I'm afraid I'm going to get fired. So there's a lot of people getting fired. There is exponentially more that think that way that just won't say it out loud.
So we've touched on this, is there has been, I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of people took it to social media using their public profile to say the most vile things, and not just say the most vile things, but celebrate and encourage more, which is obviously horrifying. Now, those are the people that I think most of us would agree are the idiots that are willing to do that. How many more are privately believing that? And that's one of the scariest things.
Yeah, that's this.
Yeah.
The amount of people who are really thinking of it, and I've been in education for 20 years.
Yeah.
Ginormous. And being even just a neutral teacher is the minority, a huge minority. And for many years we've been pressured and quieted, silenced, and just, kind of made bad to feel if you don't embrace this particular ideology, and I don't necessarily embrace that ideology. I'm not on the liberal progressive side, and so it's kind of like sometimes you almost feel like you have to say, like, I don't want to say what I really think because I'm afraid I'm going to get fired. I'm afraid of this, and it's not because of violence. And so now you've got teachers who are like secretly celebrating violence. Yeah. That's a whole different thing. It's a different thing to say I am pro-choice or I'm pro-life or I'm pro this or I'm pro that. That's a whole different thing. You believe what you want, right? But when you are the person that is like, I want this person to die, what is wrong with our country, right? What is wrong with our media? That people could think, I don't care what you think, nobody should die for it. And if somebody made you think that way, there's a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most horrifying things, too, is how many people here resonate with what Charlie Kirk says, or Ben Shapiro, or any of these conservative figures. How many people actually agree with them on almost everything, maybe even everything, right? It's millions of Americans. And this is not some radical view. This is conservatism here, right? And so how many people agree with that, and how many people are actually wishing death upon those basic conservatives within it? I'm not going to pretend like Charlie Kirk was just some center right moderate whatever. No, he was a strong conservative. He really was, but he was certainly not what they're saying he is. And what they're saying he is all these disgusting authoritarian kind of positions to justify and perhaps encourage more of that political violence.
Yeah, I saw this one clip of him where it said, the clip or the meme said, there's no place for conservatives in the Republican movement. And then I looked at the actual clip, and he was saying, who are you to say there's no place for conservatives in the movement? And it was such a complete twisted sense of what he was saying. And so those are things, and it's just so many people are now so blocked to be anywhere near willing to listen, to hear, to really investigate themselves because someone told me this, so therefore I believe that. And so I think it's this whole thing has kind of hit me in terms of being a Christian first and foremost. Yeah. It's hit me a lot in terms of where I take away is being a teacher and being my heart is for the youth, right? Like I put 20 years of this or more, and he had this vision that people are like, oh, we should look at middle age, like people that are this demographic, the people who really influence politics, and they have low voter turnout, so let's not pay attention to them. That's long-term thinking, right? Charlie had long-term thinking. This is going to affect elections in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and we're going to change the heart of the nation by getting this group now.
Last comment I'll make super quick. I do think this is a conversation. This really highlights the importance of teaching critical thinking within the classroom, and I don't know if you've kind of come to that as well, or maybe you already do that. I'm sure you do, but I think a lot of this has to do with it's consume absolute garbage and propaganda, disinformation, not misinformation, disinformation, and just regurgitating it. No, we need to be teaching the American people how to do better.
Yeah. We need to start teaching the skill of how to take a quote, a clip, and I do this in my classroom, but take a quote, take a clip, look at the bigger context, right? Get the bigger speech, the transcript, the closed captioning, whatever you need to do. And I teach my kids to do that. I don't think I don't think teachers are doing that, let alone teaching it. I don't think they do it themselves. And so, and I'm not saying that for all. There's some really amazing, wonderful teachers out there. I'm not trying to disparage teachers at all.
Absolutely.
And I think that they genuinely have good hearts and they're genuinely coming from a really good place.
Yeah.
I just think that so many are bought into this that it's just, where do we even start? And it's not necessarily the focus on our PDs, our professional developments. It's not something that we're really looking at. And I think this tells us we need to start.
Thanks for your time. You're
Thank
wonderful.
you.